On with the hinging. And so when we're hinging these pieces, what we want to do first is we want to put the pieces in proper relation to each other, and we want to make sure they don't move. Now there's two ways to do this, which either one works. If you have a classic RC airplane building table with push pins that you can push into a soft surface, then by all means you can pin the wing and the control surface, pin the fuselage and the rotor. You can pin things down so they can't move. A lot of us don't use pin building boards, and if you don't use pin building boards, then the way to do this is to use a weight. So what we're going to do is get all the stripes lined up on the aileron and the wing, and then we're going to place a handy weight, something big enough to really work, onto the wing, and we're going to place a weight on the aileron. Okay? And we can shift it a little bit after we get the weight on there and make sure that it's perfect. Now, this isn't going to slide around. We've got good weight on there and nothing's going to affect us here. We can work on this hinge line and then we can allow it to dry and nothing's going to move. So a heavy weight works just fine. If you have a building board with push pins, that also works fine. We're going to use the weight. Alright, so you're going to need two supplies for hinging. The first supply you're going to need is the glue that we use for the assembly of the EPP Extra, which is the welder adhesive. This is made by Homax products. You can buy it at home improvement stores like Home Depot and Lowe's, lumber yards like Menards. You can often get it at a large Walmart, like the Supercenter Walmart stores. And if you can't find it at any of those type of outlets in your area, we do carry it at 3D Hobby Shop. So this is a 1 ounce tube of the welder adhesive, and 1 ounce is exactly what you'll need to construct your 33-inch EPP foaming, and it will leave you a little bit left over to do repairs in case you need to. So really a 1 ounce tube is all that we're going to need. And the other tool that we need is a safety razor blade. You can use other tools because this is actually going to be a spreader. We could use the edge of a piece of plastic, like an old credit card that's no longer useful for buying airplanes, and use that. But this tool right here, the safety razor blade, does the best job that we've found of creating a perfect hinge. So I'm going to show you exactly how to do this. This is a great technique to know. It'll give you a really strong and flexible hinge. So line up your paint stripes. Line up your paint stripes and push it up tight, but it doesn't have to be absolutely tight. If you have a little corrugations in the edge from the structure of the foam, that's fine. The welder's adhesive is excellent at making a beautiful smooth hinge line out of that. So again, we're just going to take our welder's adhesive and we're going to lay a bead approximately the width of the tip of the welder's adhesive right along the hinge line between the two pieces, right along the hinge line, all the way to the tip. We'll cap the welder's adhesive in between uses. It's fast drying stuff. And we cleaned off our blade in between. We just wiped off the excess of the glue. And we'll start here on the inboard side, and we'll just float the safety razor blade right along the hinge line, spreading the glue out to a 1/2 inch wide strip. It's very thin. And now we'll allow this to dry about 45 minutes or so. It'll be dry enough to handle at our altitude. If you're in different weather conditions, you can test it with your fingertip. When it no longer is sticky, when it starts to skin and you can no longer stick your finger to it, then it's about ready to handle. Just for safety's sake, after it no longer sticks to your finger, give it another 10-15 minutes, and then you can start sliding the wing around and we can go on to the next steps of assembly. And if you look right at the hinge line, you can see the shine of the welder glue where we spread it out with the razor blade. It makes a strip about a 1/2 inch wide. We use the same technique on the elevator and horizontal stab. lay a bead of welder's glue, same diameter as the tip on the glue tube, right along the hinge line. Okay. Again, we cleaned off our razor blade, and now we're going to start from the outside edge and we're going to drag in toward the center. Okay, and then we're going to lift and we'll clean the excess glue off of the razor. A piece of scrap foam can be handy for that. Okay, and now we're going to start on the other side and we're going to drag toward the center. We're going to lift, and the reason we go from the edges to the center on this piece is we don't want to get any glue out here where the hinge line turns into the division between the elevator and the horizontal stab. This is called a balance area here on the elevator. This is the balance area, and we don't want to glue this line shut. This is not a hinge line. This has to move like this when the elevator moves, so no glue here. We start at this end, go to the center, start at this end, go to the center, and we leave this line right here and this line right here free of glue so the elevator can move on its hinge line up and down like this. Okay? We'll clean off our blade again. Okay? And we'll move on to hinging the rudder. Hinging the rudder is a little bit different. Okay, so for hinging the rudder, what we're going to do is we're not going to hinge the entire hinge line at this point. We need to build the airplane in top and bottom halves, and so this means we have to hinge half of the rudder now and half later. Let me show you how to do this. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the top half of the fuselage, that's the half with the canopy window, okay, and we're going to hinge the rudder onto this. Alright, so what we'll do is we're going to make the joint just like this. Line up our stripes, and then we're going to place a weight so that nothing can shift while we're hinging. Okay. Remember, we're only going to do the top half of the fuselage. We're not working with the bottom half right now. This is not in the picture at the moment. We're going to hinge that later. So we're going to take our welder's glue, and we're going to place a bead of welder's glue, about 3/32 of an inch, or just about the same as the diameter of the tip on the welders. We're going to take our safety razor blade, and we're going to go from the top this time. This is another balance area right here. The rudder and the fuselage have to move like this relative to each other on top, so we don't glue this area, we only glue the hinge line. So we're going to take our razor and we're going to wipe down. Okay. And we'll clean this off and let that dry, and there's the rudder hinge we're going to do for right now. What we'll do, just to make it easier to work with, I'm just going to separate it in halves. We'll work with half at a time. Okay. Okay. So we'll work with this half right here. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a good sharp X-Acto type hobby knife, and if you notice on your laser cut parts, the reason they don't fall completely out of the sheet is there are tiny tab areas left uncut. This helps us keep the hardware kits here organized, and all it takes is just a little push with the X-Acto knife, and you cut right through the tab on both sides, and then the piece falls out of the sheet. And if there's a little bump left here, just take your knife and just run your knife over it like that, and you can clean the bump right off. Okay. So this is laser cut wood, so it's dark around the edges. It's completely natural for laser cutting. Lasers remove material by burning, so it's actually laser burnt wood, and so a little burnt edge is perfectly natural. All right. So we'll take our hobby knife and we will cut these tabs to release pieces from the hardware kit, and if we have little bumps left behind, we'll just take our knife and just knock those off. Very easy to do. And you'll notice on 3D Hobby Shop foam aircraft, we do give you some identical pieces, and you'll have some of these left over after the construction. These are spares, because in a crash it's really difficult to harm EPP foam, but in a hard enough crash, if you hit the ground or hit an obstacle in a crazy enough way, you could potentially break a wood piece, so we give you spares. And we'll release the control horns and we'll use these later, but the principle's the same. Cut through the tabs. Always careful where your fingers are when you're cutting, don't cut towards your fingers. And we release these, and if we need to clean them up, we just clean up the edge a little bit like that and make it perfect. Alright, so now we're going to release all of our necessary servo arms from our hardware pack, and we'll install the servo arms onto our chosen servos. Alright, so now we have the servo arms for our foam extra released from the hardware pack. So this double-sided horn, this is for the ailerons, and this single-sided horn is for the elevator servo, and this is for the rudder servo. Now the servos that we're going to be using today are these high-tech HS45 HVs. This is the recommended servo for all three locations on the 33-inch EPP Extra. This is not the cheapest servo in the world, but let me show you a few details about this servo. Okay, so this is a completed 33-inch EPP Extra, and this has high-tech HS45 HVs on all locations. And when you're reading the specs on these servos, you might be tempted to use a servo just because it's lighter than the HS45. There are plenty of great servos out there, but I don't think we need to be tempted by weight in this particular application, because this airplane, ready to fly without lipoly, without any weight-saving tricks used anywhere on it, is only 5.5 ounces, and it flies beautifully as an indoor foamy, and you may have to ballast it up a little bit for outdoor use if it's gusting wind. It's a great lightweight calm air flyer with the three HS45s, and the HS45s have a very accurate gear train. Something that we don't recommend doing all the time to your foamy, but it's kind of a neat thing to show you, is you can actually shake the foamy on the roll axis, and the servo gears on the 45 are so accurate and so supple that you can actually actuate the ailerons up and down just by rolling the aircraft. The gear train is not stiff at all. It's low friction and it's very accurate. We really like these servos for this application, and now I'm going to show you how to prep them and install them. Okay, so we're going to unpack our HS45 HB servo and see what comes in the box. Okay, going to open the hardware pack, and we'll dump it out. Make sure nothing rolls out on the floor and gets lost in the carpet. And we have some plastic mount pieces which we're not going to be using, so we can discard these. And now we have various horns. The long horn is useful for other applications, but we won't be needing it on this aircraft. I don't recommend that you throw it away, because later on when you put these servos on a 3D Hobby Shop balsa aircraft, you'll need this horn. So we'll concentrate on this. There are two double-sided arms that come with the HS45, and we could use either of these for the 33-inch airplane, but this one's the lighter one, and it's plenty strong, so we're going to use this horn right here. And also, very importantly, we've got two screws that came in the package. Now, these are intended to be servo mounting screws. On a wood airplane, you'd be using those screws through these mounting lugs, but we're going to use these to build our servo arm system. So we'll be using them, do not discard them. So here are the pieces we're going to be using out of the HS45 package. Okay, so let's assemble servo arms. We'll start with the aileron arm, and what we're going to do, it's a very simple, easy job. If you take the double-sided high-tech arm, you can hold it up here against the plywood aileron arm, and you'll see that the outer holes, in this case these two outer holes, and the outer holes in this arm line up, And what we're going to do is we're going to use these screws to attach these arms together. So we're going to take a Phillips screwdriver of the correct size, and we're going to drive these screws through the aileron servo arm, like so. About that far. Okay. Then we're going to take the nylon servo arm, the one we've chosen, and we're going to hold it up there just like that. I'll let you get a good view of this. We'll shift it. You can get a very good view of this. Okay. So you can see how this works. And then we're going to take our screwdriver and we're going to drive these screws through the nylon arm until everything is tight. Same thing on the other screw. Okay, until everything is tight. Now all we need to do is we need to cut the end of these screws off. There's no reason to carry this weight around, so we're going to take a wire cutters type tool, and these screws cut just like a piece of wire, which means we need to protect our eyes. We don't want this to bounce into our eyes, so we should be wearing safety glasses. Okay, and we just cut the end of the screw off, and that's what's left behind. Same thing on the other one. Okay, and there you go. There's the completed aileron horn, right? And now we'll go on to the rudder and elevator.